Good morning.
Good Chodesh. Good Yor. Okay, usually I have to talk fast. Today I have to talk really slowly, or else it's going to be really quick. So, okay, we're going to start on Samach Amud Beis. Maybe we should do yesterday's daf again, just to make sure we hit 15 minutes. Okay.
That would be new for us.
That would be new. Chazara. See if you remember what we did yesterday.
Exactly. Everything would be new.
Says the Gemara, 7 lines on the bottom. Samach Amud Beis. Continue with the interesting discussions. Kisalik Rabin. When Rabin went to Eretz Yisrael, Amr Lishmaita Kamei de Rabbi Yirmiyah. He said this learning in front of Rabbi Yirmiyah. What learning? So we're going to talk about yesterday, if you remember, we had an opinion that we learned from Bechor to Kachim Kalim, that Kachim Kalim cannot be eaten when the Mizbeach is nifgam / destroyed / has a pagam in it, absent / missing. Kachim Kalim cannot be eaten in any of those situations. Again, nifgam means that there's a piece of it ruined, broken, etc. Says the Gemara, Amar, so Rabbi Yirmiyah said about this limud, that Kachim Kalim cannot be eaten when the Mizbeach is nifgam, Bavloi tipshai, Emtol diyasve ba'arech hashucha amri shmaita demechashcha. These Babylonians, these rabbis in Babel are quite dumb. Just because they live in a dark land means that they have to give dark rulings? Come on, man, what's up with this? Lo shmielu adetanya, did they not learn the following brisa? Now we're going to bring two brisas that at first glance seem to contradict each other, but again, taken together, seem to imply that the Kachim Kalim can be eaten even when the Mizbeach is nifgam / missing. Says the Gemara, Detanya Bishas Siluk Masos, when the Jews used to travel in the Midbar, what would they do with the Mishkan? They would take the Mishkan and the altars and everything else, and they would have to dismantle it in order to travel. So there's a pagam in the altar, there's a pagam in the Mizbeach, and what would happen? Says the Gemara, Kachim Nifsalin. Any kachim, any meat of an animal that had been offered on the Mizbeach became pasul. Why? Seemingly because they took apart the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara, and furthermore, V'zavim mitzorah mishtalchim chutz l'machana, or l'mechitza. This is the rule for today. You got to know this is one of the general klalim for today. We know that when somebody was a zav, if they had an emission or a mitzorah, a leper, so the mitzorah couldn't be among Bnei Yisrael in any of the machanos. He was sent outside all the machanos, and a zav was allowed to be in the machana Yisrael. He wasn't allowed to be in the machana Kahuna or the machana Leviah. That applied even while they were traveling. So the mitzorah, therefore, could not travel with any of the other travel arrangements. We had a certain travel arrangements. The Mitzorah couldn't travel with them. He needed to be outside of the travel arrangements, just like he needed to be outside of all the camps. And the Zav just couldn't travel with the Leviim, but he could still travel with the regular Jewish people, because just like he was allowed to be in the Jewish camp, he could travel with the Jewish people. He just couldn't be amongst the Leviim. That's parenthetically. That's a side point. But what we see for our purposes is that Kachim Nifsalin, when they used to take apart the altar to travel, they can no longer eat the kachim, seemingly kachim kalim, as we're trying to prove, and therefore you clearly see that kachim kalim cannot, N-O-T, be eaten when the altar is nifgam or taken apart. Says Gemara, the problem is we have a Vitanya idach. This is Rabbi Yirmiyah talking. We have another brisa that says, B'shnei mekomos kachim nechalim. There are two places where kachim can be eaten, seemingly even when the Mishkan was dismantled. What's that? Says the Gemara, my love, habakachim kalim. So it seems like the second brisa is saying that even when the Mishkan is dismantled, kachim, which they're learning as being kachim kalim, can in fact be eaten. So you have to have seemingly a steer in the brisa. Says the Gemara, my love, habakachim kalim. So how does he answer it? So Rabbi Yirmiyah says it must be that the brisa which says that you cannot eat kachim when the altar and Mishkan are dismantled is talking about the kachim, the most holy ones. The one that says you can eat them is talking about kachim kalim, which is against what you said yesterday, because yesterday that opinion said that kachim kalim cannot be eaten when the altar is dismantled. Says the Gemara, no, Amar Avina, Aidi v'Aidi b'kachim kalim. No, they're both talking about kachim kalim, and really they cannot be eaten. Even kachim kalim cannot be eaten when the altar is dismantled. So what does it mean in the second brisa when it says B'shnei mekomos kachim nechalim v'lo kashya ha Rabbi Yishmael ha Rabbanan? No, you're not dreaming. 3 lines. This is Rabbi Yishmael, and this is the Rabbanan. That means that there's 2 different opinions. Rabbi Yishmael says that once the Mizbeach is nifgam, you cannot eat the kachim kalim. And the Rabbanan, which is the opinion the opinion that he doesn't like, the opinion that Ravin doesn't like, or that Rabbi Yirmiyah doesn't like, the opinion from yesterday, that's going to be the Rabbanan who say that kachim kalim can be eaten even when the mizbeach is dismantled / nifkam / no mizbeach. So it's basically the answer to the question is, the easy answer, it's a machlokes. He holds like this opinion, and you hold like this opinion. V'iba, you say more, you could say no. We're not dealing with kachim kalim. And we don't know necessarily what these brises would hold about kachim kalim. You're going to say that they would hold that kachim kalim can not be eaten when the mizbeach was dismantled. And I'm going to hold that kachim kalim can be eaten. But these brises which are talking about you can or can't eat them, it's talking about kachim. And kachim cannot be eaten when the mizbeach is dismantled. So what does it seem to imply in the second brisa when it says b'shnei mekomos it can be eaten, which implies that kachim again, which is what we're talking about here, according to you, can be eaten. Umay b'shnei mekomos. It doesn't mean that they can be eaten. What's the chiddush? B'shkodem sheyamidu leviyim es hamishkan. And the Rishonim clearly point out when it says kodem here, it doesn't mean before. It means after. It's just using it as a stylistic word. Kodem, before, i.e. after the Levium set up the Mishkan. When they go to a new place and they set up the Mishkan, then the kachim can be eaten. Ula'achar sheyifriku al Levium es hamishkan. What's the chiddush? Again, according to this now, we're saying that kachim, we're talking about kachim. We don't know what the halacha would be by kachim, the lower level. Some people would say yes, when the mizbeach is dismantled, you could still eat it. Other people would say no. But kachim, everybody agrees, once the mizbeach is dismantled, you cannot eat it. That's fine. That's what the first brisa says. But the second brisa, which says b'shnei mekomos kachim, which we're talking about kachim can be eaten. What does that mean? So he says before it's dismantled and after it's set up. What's the chiddush? Obviously, you could eat it before it's dismantled and after it's set up. The chiddush is ula'achar sheyifriku al leviyim es hamishkan. What's the chiddush? The chiddush of the second brisa is that yes, kachim cannot be eaten once the altar is dismantled, but it could still be eaten after the chatzer is dismantled. That means you have the Mishkan, you have the curtains around the Mishkan, which we've been discussing. You would think that once the curtains come down, I guess seemingly they would take down the curtains first. It was very cool to be there. But seemingly they would take down the curtains first, then they would dismantle the altar. They would go from the outside in. So you might think once the curtains are taken down, the chatzer, which is the place seemingly that, again, everything is, the chatzer would go ahead and you can no longer eat the kachim because the chatzer is not there. It would be like the basar is taken out of the chatzer, which we know, once it's taken out of the chatzer, it's asur to eat. By definition, there is no chatzer. Kamash malan, that even though the chatzer was taken down, as long as the mizbeach is still there, you could still eat it until they dismantle the altar. That's the chiddush. Mao desema ifsalahu biyotze, kamash malan. You might think again that after the Levium take down the outside, they take down the curtains, the kachim should be pasul because by definition they've quote unquote left the courtyard. Kamash malan, it could be eaten until the actual mizbeach is dismantled. But both brises are agreeing that once the mizbeach is dismantled, the kachim cannot be eaten. The chiddush of the second brisa is that it can still be eaten after the chatzer is dismantled before the actual mizbeach is dismantled. Yes, doctor?
The chatzer is defined by the curtain. So
right.
if you take down the curtain, there isn't anything there.
Right, so the Gemara is saying that, but that doesn't ruin. That's different. The chiddush is that if you would take the meat outside of the chatzer, you ruin the meat. The chiddush is that if you take the chatzer out of the meat, then you don't ruin the meat. If you would take the meat and walk out of the chatzer with it, then you ruin the meat. But if you take the chatzer away, and you don't actually take the meat anywhere, you just remove the chatzer from the meat, that doesn't ruin it until you dismantle the altar. You're basically standing here in the chatzer with the meat. Right now you can eat it.
And there's no curtain around it.
No, there's a curtain. Now we take down the curtain.
Right.
So by definition, you're not in the chatzer anymore.
Right.
So you might think that now you can no longer eat the meat because it gets ruined once it leaves the chatzer.
Right.
Kamash malan, you're still standing in the same spot, and it doesn't get ruined until we dismantle the actual altar. Says the Gemara, one second, ve'ema hachinami, seems to be a good argument. Eina chanami, you take down the curtain, there's no more chatzer. Says the Gemara, amar krav nasa oel moed, when you travel, and it calls, when you travel, it still calls it the oel moed. Afa pisha nasa oel moed hu. Even while you're traveling, the chatzer keeps the sanctity. Obviously, that spot doesn't keep the sanctity, but quote unquote, the sanctity of having a chatzer is still there even while you're traveling. And therefore, again, the kachim are only going to be asur once the mizbeach is dismantled, not when the Mishkan is dismantled. New topic. Amar Afuna, Amar Rav. Mizbeach shel Shiloh shel Avanim Haya. We know that the Mizbeach stood for 14 years. 7 and 7 when they were splitting up the land and then apportioning the land. 14 years it stood in Gilgal. Then for the next 369 years, it stood in Shiloh. Then for the next 57 years, it stood in Nov and Givon. And then it stood in the Beis HaMikdash. So these 369 years, again, 14 years in Gilgal. And then remember, what did we have? We had the Mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu from the Mishkan. Seemingly that Mizbeach was then transferred and used in Gilgal. And the question is, was that Mizbeach then transferred and used in Shiloh, or did they build a new Mizbeach in Shiloh? So this opinion says, Amar Fun Amarav, Mizbeach shel Shiloh shel Avanim Haya. The Mizbeach of Shiloh was a new Mizbeach, because we know the Mizbeach of Moshe was made of wood, it was covered with copper, and it was hollow on the inside, and there was earth put inside. So it was wood with copper, and there was earth inside. The Mizbeach in Shiloh was made out of stone, says Rabbi Yehuda Amarav. So that was a new Mizbeach. Detanya, Rabbi Zev ben Yaakov Omer, Ma Talmud Lomer Avanim Avanim Avanim. Why are there three psukim that say stone, stone, stone? Shalosh Pa'amim, because there were three Mizbeachs of stone. Echad shel Shiloh, ve'echad shel Nov v'Givon. Again, stood there for 57 years. So that was made of stone also. Uveis Olamim, and the one in the Beis HaMikdash. So Moshe's was made of wood with copper, and then the one in Shiloh, the one in Nov and Givon, and the one in the Beis HaMikdash was made with stones. Masav Racha Barami, I have a problem with your opinion that the Shiloh one was a new one, it was made of stones. Why? Very cool. Eish sheyarda min hashamayim bimei Moshe, lo nistalka me'al mizbeach hanechoshes, that's why it's called the mizbeach hanechoshes, it was wood covered in copper, ella bimei Shlomo. So what happened? It says in the Brisa that during the Chanukas HaMishkan, a fire came down onto the Mizbeach of Moshe, which came and burnt the korbanos, and that continued to burn constantly. It's actually cool when they would move the Mizbeach. How did they move the Mishkan? There was a fire on it. It continued to burn. They would put like a special copper cover over the fire, and then they would put it into a box, and somehow the fire wouldn't go out, and they would move it to the next location, and then they would set up shop again. It was very cool to be there, besides for the mun and all the other things, but
Put it in a wood box?
it sounds like they put it into a copper, they would put it, but even if they put it into a wood box, they would cover it with with like a copper cover. So the point is that over here, what do you clearly see? One second, let's just finish this part and then we'll take the questions. You see that the fire continued to burn on the Mizbeach of Moshe from the time of Moshe till the time of Shlomo HaMelech. That was the Beis HaMikdash. But you just told me that, there was a new Mizbeach at the time of Shiloh. How's that possible? You just finished telling me that there's a Mizbeach of stone at the time of Shiloh, but we clearly see that there was a fire on the Mizbeach of Moshe, which seemingly is a Mizbeach that we used all the way from the time of the Mishkan till the times of the Beis HaMikdash, which was 400 plus years. Says the Gemara, V'yesh sheyarda b'mei Shlomo. Then in the times of Shlomo and the Beis HaMikdash, they had a new altar made of stones. Then there was a new Eish that came down, Lo nistalkat sheba Menashe v'silka, and that only went out when the Rasha Menashe went out and put it out. V'im Isa, and if it's true the way you're saying that there was a new stone altar in Shiloh, meikarahu d'istalik lei. Then at the end of the day, if Shiloh had a mizbeach of stones, then the mizbeach of Moshe went out long before the mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech. It went out at the times of Shiloh, 450 years earlier. So what are you talking about? Says the Gemara, Hu da'amar Rabbi Nassan. So we're going to give a few answers. Rafuna, who holds that the Mizbeach of Shiloh was made of stones, he holds like Rabbi Nassan, who argues with this brisa, and actually holds that the Eish of Moshe Rabbeinu went out at the time of Shiloh, because Ein Chanami, they got a new Mizbeach. Like it says, Ditani Rabbi Nassan Omer, Mizbeach shel Shiloh shel nechoshes hayachalol u'malei avanim. When it says it was made of avanim, it was also made of copper, and it was hollow, and it was filled with avanim. But again, he clearly holds that as opposed to the Mizbeach HaMoshe, which was filled with earth, Rabbi Nassan argues on the last brayso, and he holds that the Eish of the Mizbeach HaMoshe actually went out with the new Mizbeach in Shiloh, not later like we thought with the Mizbeach of Shlomo, and therefore the Mizbeach of Shiloh is in fact different, and it's okay to suggest that the Mizbeach of Shiloh was different than the Mizbeach HaMoshe made of Avanim. That's one way to answer. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Omer, no. He says, no, it's the same Mizbeach. It's the same Mizbeach, so how can you say that the Mizbeach of Shiloh was made out of stones? He says, what's the problem? Why did you have a problem? The problem was all based on the fire, because it says the fire of Moshe lo nistalka, which we understood meant didn't go out. Well, how did it not go out if you have a new Mizbeach? It says in Gemara, lo nistalka libatala. It just means that it didn't go out totally. That means that it was still there, but it was transferred to the Mizbeach of Shiloh. So yes, you could say both. We thought that the two things were contradictory. How can you have a new Mizbeach in Shiloh and have the old fire of Moshe? We're saying no. The fire of Moshe wasn't put out. It It was just transferred to the fire of Shiloh. What does that mean? So listen to this. This is pretty cool. Mahi, what does that mean? Rabbanan Amar Shviva Hava Mishadra. What they would do is, Mizbeach of Moshe was there with the fire, and it was put next to the new Mizbeach in Shiloh. And what would happen? What are you shaking your head? It's not possible. What would happen? They would put the korban onto the Mizbeach at Shiloh. You believe it. You believe. They put it onto the Mizbeach in Shiloh, and the flames or the sparks would jump from the Mizbeach of Moshe and consume the korbanos on the Mizbeach of Shlomo, on the Mizbeach of Shiloh. If you read this Gemara and you don't want to be there at the time, then you gotta... Yeah, we got to work on you. Says the Gemara, 1 second. That's one answer. Rav Papa Amar Ushpiza Havanakid V'Zimnin Hacha V'Zimnin Hacha. This sounds like, Ushpiza means like a guest, like the Ushpizin on Sukkot. It sounds like what happened was the fire was a guest. It became a guest. Sometimes it was on the Mizbeach of Moshe, and sometimes it was on the Mizbeach of Shiloh. Like it went back and forth from one to the other. I don't know if they physically...
They had two Mizbeachs?
It sounds like they had two Mizbeachs. That's what it clearly sounds like in the... So it could be again. It could be Mizbeach. It could be that the Ushpiza means that it was a guest. But it sounds like Ushpiza, according to this, it was from here to here. It would literally be lit here, and then they would transfer it, and it would go out here, and then they would transfer it to here. Again, I don't know if they physically transferred it or it just was a miracle. But at the end of the day, that's what it seems to be saying. Says the Gemara. Fine. That's the end of this topic. So again, it comes out that one can either say that Eina Chanami, the two brises don't get along with each other, and therefore, by definition, you have to hold that once the fire on the Mizbeach of Moshe went out, that's when the new Mizbeach at Shiloh came. So the new Mizbeach of Shiloh came, and the fire of Moshe went out. That's one way of learning. Or you could learn that you had both Mizbeach at the same time. You had the Mizbeach of Moshe there. What does it mean, lo nistalka? It didn't go out. It means it didn't go out fully, but it was transferred. It was sitting next to the Mizbeach at Shiloh, and it would burn the korbanos on the Mizbeach of Shiloh. Or you could say that there was two fires, and it would be transferred from one to the other, depending on the day and depending on the time. Yeah.
I was wondering, would there be a problem that with the old Moshe, you would have to, it's holy, you can't just dump it.
Right, so I don't know exactly what they did with it. I'm assuming they'd have to bury it or something. I don't know what they did with it. New topic. It's not awesome. Let's finish up. Kisha'alu b'nei hagola to Eretz Yisrael hosifo olav daled amos min hadarom v'daled amos min hamarav kamin gama. So what would happen? The original altar in the first Beis HaMikdash was 28 amos square, 28 by 28. When they came for the second Beis HaMikdash, it was 32 by 32. They added a spot on the south and on the west. So again, if you're looking at our picture, so if you imagine it in front of us, we have the west over here and the south over here. So they added 4 amos here and 4 amos here. So now we're 32 by 32. Well, you have to read the Gemara. Let's keep going. It's a good thing the daf's not over. My taima, what was the reason why? Alan, that's an excellent question. Amar Rav Yosef, mishum de lo sipek. Because there wasn't enough room anymore. There were so many korbanos that were being brought, they needed those 4 amos. It's 8 by 8 feet. It's a lot of room for more korbanos. Says the Gemara, good question, why, but bad answer. Amar le Abaye, hashta mikdash rishon dechsid be Yehuda v'Yisrael rabim b'chol asher al sfas hayam. There were millions of people of Jews, like the sand of the sea, the sand of the beach, during the time of the first temple. And yet, 28 by 28 was big enough. Sipek, there was enough. Mikdash Sheni, Dechsibe, there were much fewer Jews at the time of the Mikdash Sheni who returned to Eretz Yisrael. Kol Akal Ke'echad Arbariba, there were only 42,360 Jews. So you went from having enough space when you had millions of Jews to not having enough space when there were 42,360 Jews. Says the Gemara, Lo Sipek, it wasn't enough. Amarle, Hasam Eish Shel Shamayim Misayasan, Hacha Ein Eish Shel Shamayim Misayasan. Fascinating. There was still an Eish at the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, and it was still there, and seemingly they would burn some stuff. But in terms of totally consuming the korbanos, the miracle that the Eish would just consume the korban, that only happened at the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. Even though it was a smaller space, you could bring thousands of korbanos because you would literally put them and the Eish would just consume them right away. The times of the second Beis HaMikdash, the Eish was there, you'd still burn it, but it would be more of a natural process, where it wasn't supernatural, and therefore it would take a lot longer for the stuff to burn, and therefore you would need a bigger Mizbeach to have more room and more space to bring the korbanos.
The 28 dimension I gave you, is that Moshe's Mizbeach?
No, it sounds like the first bit of Mikdash. It sounds like the first Mikdash. What?
What about korbanos which weren't totally consumed?
So then that wasn't a problem. But the point is that we needed to have space for the ones that were consumed. So says the Gemara, this is the first Mikdash to the second Mikdash, 28 by 28 to 32 by 32.
The second bit of Mikdash within the Eish.
It says, it's interesting. That's what I thought. Look at the Rashi on the left. Look at the Rashi. Hacha. You see, but next to where it says Asfasyam, it says Hacha. B'mikdash sheni, ein eish shel shamayim misayasan. The eish didn't help burn the korbanos. Kidi alfina berakama diyoma, varatzo vechaved, mechusar hey. There were 5 things missing. Elu hey devarim shechasar mikdash sheni, ve'eish echad mehen, ve'amrinan hasam, it says in the Gemara in Yuma, mihava hava. There was an eish. Siyua lo misayeya. It didn't burn the fire. It didn't help burn, but there was an eish. There was a fire on the second Mishkan. That's what he says in the Gemara in Yuma. There was a fire, but it didn't have these supernatural powers to be able to burn the korbanos the way that the fire burnt the korbanos in the first Beis HaMikdash.
There's no Beis HaMikdash that was around?
That's what it sounds like.
They burned it out.
That's what it sounds like. Says the Gemara, yes.
They burned it out Azara.
Maybe.
In Azara.
Kiyasa Rabin, when Rabin came to Bavel, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi Mishum Bar Kafra, Shisin Hosifu. So the question became, you still haven't answered, so, okay, so there was no Aish, you need to make it bigger because there was no Aish to eat it. But now it says Gemara, when Rabin came to Bavel, he says, Shitin Hosifu. That they expanded the Mizbeach, he gives another reason. Again, the first reason is because the Aish didn't help out, so now they needed a bigger Mizbeach. The second reason is because they wanted to do something a little different. In the first Beis HaMikdash, they used to go ahead and they used to pour, in the second Beis HaMikdash, they would pour water and wine, nisachim, libations, onto the altar. In the first Beis HaMikdash, what would happen is they would pour it on the altar, and there would be like a little bit of a slide, like a ramp, that would go down. It would go on the side of the altar, and it would end up in a hole on the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. It would end up, you have a picture there?
Maybe, that's why it was holy.
Yeah, it would end up on a hole over there, and it would go into the shitin, which were subterranean cavities. So you basically poured the libations on top of the Mizbeach, it ran down the side of the Mizbeach, the southwest corner, and went into this hole, into the shitin, into the subterranean cavities. In the second temple, you know what they did? Says the Gemara, Shitin Hosifu. What did they do? In the second temple, when they expanded it with another 4x4, so let's say this was the altar, so the hole was right here. In the second temple, they expanded it, and now the Mizbeach covered the hole. So what did they do? They drilled a hole through the top of the Mizbeach, and now they didn't have to let it run around the side and into the cavity and down into the ground. They would pour it straight from the top of the Mizbeach, straight through the hole on the bottom, and into the cavity. Yes, very holy. Says the Gemara, Meikara Sabur Mizbeach Adama. Why did they change their thing? Because in the beginning we know it says Mizbeach Adama Ta'aseli. You have to make an earthenware, quote unquote, Mizbeach, which we said had avadim filled, whatever, but the point is that it needed to be Adama, it needed to be earth. So they thought Shehu Atum Adama, it needed to be totally filled with earth or with stones or whatever it was filled with. But it couldn't be hollow. You couldn't make a hole in the middle of the Mizbeach. Then they realized Uluvasov Savar Shtia Ka'achila. Fascinating. Then they realized that the Mizbeach eats. If the Mizbeach eats, then the Mizbeach can drink. What does the Mizbeach eat? The Mizbeach eats when it consumes the emurin, when it consumes the different korbanos, so the different parts of the korbanos. So if eating is not a problem, then drinking is not a problem either. Fascinating. So they made a hole, and they said even with a hole, it's not going to be a problem of drinking the Mizbeach, or the Mizbeach drinking. Umay Mizbeach Adami. So what do you do with the pasuk that says Mizbeach Adama Taseli, which seems to say it has to be fully connected or fully part of the Adama, the earth? It says in Gemara, it just means it needs to be connected to the earth, but doesn't mean that it can't have a hole in it. Shehu Mechubar Ba'adama, it's connected to the earth. What does that mean? Shelo Yavinenu Al Gabe Kifim, you can't build it on top of arches. Velo Al Gabe Mechilo, so on top of cavities. That means you can't make a big hole and build it on top of the big hole. You can't make arches and build it on top of the arches. But at the end of the day, it's okay for the Mizbeach to drink, just like it's okay for the Mizbeach to eat. Shkoyach, everyone. Have a wonderful day.